Hi there students! Welcome back again to another video lesson for Grade 7 Mathematics, Quarter 4. So, after nating i-discuss yung measures of variability of ungrouped data, so our next video lesson will be measures of variability of group data. So, i-discuss lahat natin dito from range, average deviation or yung mean deviation, variance, and standard deviation. So, don't worry, step by step nating i-discuss yan para maging guided po kayo. So, let's start. So, for the lesson objective, basically, so yun yung ating focus is to calculate the measures of variability of group data. So, lahat nung binanggit natin kanina is i-discuss po natin yan step by step. So, again, to discuss what is average deviation. So, average deviation, or also known as mean deviation, is calculated to determine how far all values in a distribution from the mean. So, dito tinitignan natin kung gaano kalayo yung individual scores dun sa mean. Okay. So, since group data ang pinag-uusapan natin, ito po ang kanyang formula. So, average deviation is equal to summation of the product of the frequency and the absolute difference of the midpoint and the mean all over n. So, yung mga variables na nakikita nyo po dyan, so, x sub m represents the class mark. So, class mark is what we call the midpoint. So, ina-add natin yung lower class tsaka upper class limits and then divide it by 2. And then, x bar, that is the mean, okay, the average. And then, n is the number of observations or the frequency, total number of frequency. So, yung F po dyan stands for the frequency of each class. So, let us now discuss the steps in calculating the average deviation of group data. Okay, so the first step, so add columns for x sub m or the class mark, fx sub m, that is the product of the frequency and class mark, and then the absolute value difference of the class mark and mean, and finally, the product of the frequency and the absolute value difference of the class mark and mean. Okay, so yun po yung mga yellow na nakikita nyo dyan. So para lang alam nyo kung ano yung ibig sabihin ng mga yan, yung mga variables na yan. So, second step, calculate the mean and fill in the columns for the absolute value difference of the class mark and mean, tsaka yung product of the frequency and the absolute value difference of the class mark and mean. So, yung first step na kailangan natin dyan, syempre, is yung i-calculate natin yung mean. Kasi wala tayong isusubtract dun sa class mark unless meron tayong average or yung mean. And then, calculate the average deviation. So, once na fill out na natin yung mga columns ng mga proper value, correct values, that is the time that we will be applying the formula. And then, we would be able to determine the average deviation. Okay, so kung ano yung pinakagitnang value na kung saan makikita natin kung gaano kalayo yung mga values dun sa ating mean. So, let us have an example. So, the table below shows the height in centimeters of 40 students of grade 7 Sampaguita. So, find the average deviation. So, for this problem, we are talking about height. So, kung gaano katangkad, gaano kaliit ang isang estudyante. Okay, so, yung ating students ay galing sa grade 7 Sampaguita. Okay, so, on the first column, you will see there yung height in centimeter. So, ayan. Wherein 155 yung highest possible na height ng isang grade 7 student dun sa 40 students na yan. And then, 121 naman yung pinaka mababa. Okay, so i-discuss na lang natin dito yung range. So, kung kukunin natin yung range sa group data, so range is equal to upper boundary minus lower boundary. Okay, so yung upper boundary natin dito is yung ito. Mag-a-add tayo ng 0.5 sa kanya. So, magiging 155.5. And then, yung lower boundary natin, magsusubtract tayo ng 0.5 sa 121. And that will become 120.5. So, subtract natin yon. Ang makukuha nating sagot is 35. So, ganyan kalalayo yung height. Ganyan kalayo yung height ng pinakamatangkad sa pinakamaliit out of the 40 students. So, ganyan po ang range of group data. So, mag-add tayo ng 4 na columns. So, kasi yan ang kinakailangan natin. And then, if-fill out natin yung first 2 columns na in-add natin. Yung class mark, tsaka yung product ng frequency and class mark. So, dito sa x sub n, yung tinatawag nating midpoint or class mark, so, i-add lang po natin yung 151, yung pinakamababa, tsaka yung 155. And then, yung nakuha nating sum is i-divide lang natin by 2. So, 151 plus 155 will have 306. And then, divided by 2 will get 153. So, kapag yung numbers natin, yung class natin, yung interval niya is odd number, yung pinakagitna agad, yun ang ating kukunin. And then, yung class interval natin, which is 5, isusubtract natin yun sa 153 pababa. Yun ang pinakamadaling technique. So, 153 minus 5 will get 148. Then, 143, 138, 133, 128, and then 123. Next, dito naman sa column ng product ng frequency and then yung midpoint, so, i-multiply lang po natin yung frequency and class mark. So, parang kung paano natin i-compute yung mean. Kasi yun ang una natin kukunin dyan. So, ganyan. Kailangan makuha natin yung product ng frequency and then yung midpoint. 6 times 153, that is 918. And then, next, 11 times 148, that is 1,628. 7 times 143 will have 931. 3 times 138, that is 414. 1 times 333, that is 133. 8 times 128 will have 1,024. And finally, 4 times 123 will have 492. Okay. So, dapat, dyan pa lang po sa class mark, tama na. Kasi, once na mali na po yung class mark, automatically yung product ng frequency and class mark, mali na agad. And then, kunin natin yung summation. So, add lang natin yung mga nakuha natin dyan. So, 918 plus 1,628 plus 931 plus 414 plus 133 plus 1,024 plus 492. So, yung sum natin is 5,540. Okay. So, next, calculate the mean using the formula. So, x bar, or that is mean, is equal to summation of the product of the frequency and the class mark all over n. Okay. So, sulat lang natin yung ating interval, which is 5. And then, yung summation na nakuha natin is 5,540. Now, we will calculate for the mean. So, yung nakuha nating summation is 5,540. I-divide natin sa 40. So, yung mean natin, Kapag dinivide natin yung 5,540 sa 40 is 138.5. Now, fill in the columns. So, yung natitira nating dalawang column. So, kailangan i-fill out natin yan. So, yung nakuha nating mean kanina is 138.5. Okay, so yung nakuha nating class mark, tsaka yung nakuha nating mean, ipagsusubtract natin yan. And then, kukunin natin yung absolute value. Okay, so ibig sabihin, wala tayong makukuhang negative dito kasi absolute value nga. So first, 153 minus 138.5. And that is 14.5. And then the absolute value of 14.5 is 14.5. Next, 148 minus 138.5. That is 9.5. 143 minus 138.5 will have 4.5. 138 minus 138.5, that is negative 0.5. Since negative siya, kunin natin absolute value, it will become 0.5. Next, 133 minus 138.5, that is negative 5.5. The absolute value of negative 0.5 is 5.5. Next, 128 minus 138.5 is negative 10.5. The absolute value of negative 10.5 is 10.5. And then, finally, 123 minus 138.5, that is negative 15.5. And the absolute value of 15.5, negative 15.5 is positive 15.5. So, ayan na po. Doon na po tayo sa last column. So, sa last column, i-multiply lang natin yung nakuha nating absolute value difference doon sa frequency. So, first, 6 times 14.5. So, yung 6, ito po siya, yung frequency. I-multiply po natin dito. Okay. So, that is 87. Next, 11 times 9.5, that is 104.5. Next, 4.5 times 7, that is 31.5. 3 times 0.5 will have 1.5. 1 times 0.5, that is 5.5. 8 times 10.5 will have 84. And then finally, 4 times 15.5 will have 62. Okay, next. So, yung last column natin, i-add lang natin. Kunin natin yung summation. Okay. So, that is 87 plus 104.5 plus 31.5 plus 1.5 plus 5.5 plus 84 plus 62 will have a sum of 376. Now, we will calculate the average deviation using the formula. Okay. So, yung nakuha nating summation kanina is 376. And then, yung n natin is 40. So, kapag yung 376, dinivide yan natin sa 40, ang quotient na makukuha natin is 9.4. So, yun yung pinaka-average na layo ng mga height ng 40 students. 9.4. 4. So let us define what is variance again. So variance is the mean of the square of the deviations from the mean of a frequency distribution. So mean, average. Okay. So for large quantities, the variance is computed using frequency distribution with columns for the midpoint value, the product of the frequency and midpoint value for each interval, the deviation and its square, and the product of the frequency and the squared deviation. So kapag variance siya at group data yan, marami po yung columns. Anyway, madali lang naman po kung paano i-fill out yung mga column na yon. So, kaya lang, step by step siya. Kapag sa first step, mali ka na, automatically hanggang sa pinakadulo, sa final answer mo, mali na siya. Make sure, dun pa lang sa first step, tama na yung mga values na ine-enter at kino-compute natin. So, yan, i-guide ko kayo kung paano sagutin yan. I-fill out yung frequency distribution. So, what about standard deviation? The standard deviation is considered the best indicator of the degree of the dispersion among the measures of variability because it represents an average variability of the distribution. Okay, so yan ang pinakagamit talaga kapag measures of dispersion or degree of dispersion ang pinag-uusapan natin kung gaano kalalapit, gaano kalalayo yung mga scores, yung mga data, ayan, na ina-analyze natin. Okay, so kapag yung ating mga scores, yung ating mga data ay pare-pareho, just like halimbawa yung mga grades ng 10 students, lahat 90. Okay, so kapag kinuha natin yung standard deviation, 0 po ang magiging sagot natin. Dahil pare-pareho lang naman po yung mga numbers, yung mga grades. Hindi natin makukuha yung dispersion kasi automatically nga 0 siya. And then, given the set of data, the smaller the range, the smaller the standard deviation. The less spread is the distribution. Okay. So, kapag yung range na nakuha natin is mababa, mababa din po yung makukuha nating standard deviation. Ibig sabihin, hindi magkakalayo yung mga score. Hindi sila sobrang layo. Okay. So here are the steps in calculating the variance and standard deviation. So steps ulit ito. So anyway, kahit banggitin ko yung mga steps na yan mamaya, i-apply naman natin, makikita nyo naman kung paano ko isosolve yan at fill out yung mga columns. So first, construct a frequency distribution table. So, kung data po yung given, kailangan nating mag-construct ng frequency distribution table. Anyway, meron naman tayong video lesson dyan kung paano natin i-construct ang frequency distribution table. So, dito sa ating video lesson, given na po agad yung ating frequency distribution table. And then, on the second step, add column for midpoint. So, ayan, familiar na kayo sa midpoint. And then, add column for fx sub m. So, para makuha yung fx sub m na yan, yung product ng frequency and midpoint. So, ipag-multiply lang po natin yan. So, yung frequency tsaka midpoint. And then, add fx sub n, yung product ng frequency and midpoint or class mark for each interval to get the summation. Siyempre, i-add natin yon kasi kailangan nating makuha dyan yung mean. And then, yun yung fifth step. Kailangan nating makompute yung average or yung mean using that formula. Summation of the product of the frequency and midpoint all over n, which is the total frequency. So, let us add column for the difference of the class mark and the mean. So, to calculate the deviation, so, subtract the mean from each midpoint. Okay, so yan po yan. Kailangan makuha muna natin yung mean para mas makuha natin yung difference nung kada midpoint. Midpoint of each classes. Next, number 7. So, once na nakuha na natin yung difference ng mean tsaka yung midpoint, Yung deviation, so para makuha nating square deviation, square natin yon. Halimbawa, yung nakuha nating difference is 4.5. O kaya, negative 4.5. In-square natin yon, magiging positive lagi yon. So, hindi natin kailangan dito yung absolute value. It's because yung negative value na makukuha natin dun sa difference, so square natin yon, automatically magiging positive. And then number 8, add column for the product of the frequency and the square deviation. And then, kunin din natin yung summation nung product na yon. And then, calculate the variance using the formula. So, make sure nakuha lahat natin na kumpleto lahat natin yung mga kailangan isulat dun sa table para mabilis nating makakompute yung variance and standard deviation. So, for variance, that is the formula. And then, sabi ko nga, yung standard deviation, extract natin yung square root ng variance. Madali na lang po yun. So, by the way, dun sa formula, so F is the frequency, X sub M is the midpoint, X is the mean, and N is the total frequency. So, ito naman po ang formula for standard deviation. Yung mismong square root ng variance. Okay. So, let us now have the sample problem. So, the table below shows the third quarter grades of grade 7 Mabini in mathematics. Find the variance in standard deviation. So, for this problem, so we are talking about quarterly grades. Okay, so grades ng mga students. So, as you can see, yung highest grade, possible grade na pwedeng makuha ng bata dyan is 99. And then the lowest possible grade is 75. Anyway, 75 is still a passing grade. And then on the second column, you can see frequency. Ibig sabihin, how many students got a grade of 95 to 99? Okay, from the range na class 95 to 99. So, tatlo po yan. So, you can see, yung 85 to 89, yun yung pinaka mataas ang frequency. Ibig sabihin, maraming students ang nakukuha ng grades na ganyan from 85 to 89. So, step 2. Okay. So, for the second step, kasi given na yung frequency distribution table natin. Anyway, pag hindi siya given, pwede naman natin yun i-construct. So, usually given naman agad yan, yung ating frequency distribution table. So, add column for midpoint. Okay. So, mag-add tayo ng column for midpoint. So, lista natin yung mga 95, grades na 95 to 99 para makiuputan nyo yung midpoint. O yung median. Okay, ayan. So, nilista natin 95, 96, 97, 98, 99. Yung pinakagitna po dyan is 97. So, yun yung magsisilbing midpoint or class mark. And then, yung class interval natin na 5, so isusubtract lang po natin yun pababa, magsimula sa 97. So, 97 minus 5, that is 92. And then, 87, 82, and then, 77. So, yan lang po yung class mark or yung midpoint na tinatawag. Step 3 to 4, so add column for the product of the frequency and the midpoint, then get the summation. Okay, so yan. Step 3 and 4, pinagsama na natin. So, next, yung frequency, multiply natin sa class mark or yung midpoint. So, 3 times 97, that is 291. 8 times 92 will have 736. Next, 87 times 15, we have 1,305. 9 times 82, that is 738. And then 5 times 77 will have 385. And then, add natin yung mga nakuha nating product dyan para makuha natin yung summation. So, 291 plus 736 plus 1,305 plus 738 plus 385. So the sum is 3,455. So magagamit po kasi natin yan kapag ginuha natin yung mean. Step 5. Compute for the mean using the formula. Okay. So, yung summation na nakuha natin, 3,455, i-divide lang po natin by 40. Yun yung ating mean. So, 3,455 divided by 40. So, the result is 86.375. Okay. Or pwede rin natin yung i-round up to the nearest hundredths or 2 decimal places. That will become 86.38. So for the next step, add column for the difference of the midpoint and the mean. Okay. So yung nakuha nating mean, so sulat lang natin, is 86.38. So ngayon, yung next step natin, so yung class mark ng each classed, minusan natin nung mean. So 97 minus 86.38. So we will get 10.62. Next, 92 minus 86.38 will have 5.62. 87 minus 86.38 will have 0.62. Next, 82 minus 86.38 will have negative 4.38. Mas mataas po kasi yung value ng mean dun sa class mark, kaya negative po siya. Next, 77 minus 86.38 will have negative 9.38. Anyway, huwag tayong mag-worry kung negative ang nakuha na. May nakuha tayong negative values dyan. Kasi, on the next step, square natin yung deviations. So, ito na siya. So, square natin. So, 10.62 square. So, that is 10.62 times 10.62. And then, yung makukuha nating value is 112.7844. Next, 5.62 times 5.62 will have 31.5844. Next, 0.62 times 0.62, that is 0.3844. Next, negative 4.38 times negative 4.38, that is 19.1844. And then finally, negative 9.38 times negative 9.38, the product is 87.9844. Okay. So, ganyan lang po yung process. Okay, step by step siya. So, yan, step number 7 na yan. Step number 8. So, add column for the product of the square deviation and frequency. So, yan na usually yung last step natin sa table. Kasi yung kasunod na steps, 9 and 10, kukompute na natin yung variance and standard deviation. So, ayan. So, yung frequency natin na 3, multiply natin sa 112.7844. So, 3 times 112.7844 will have 338.3532. Next, 8 times 31.5844, That is 252.6752. So, reminder lang, hindi tayo makakarating dyan sa last column, yung pang 7th column natin, unless wala po yung 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. Okay, kasi yung frequency lang dyan ang given, tsaka yung class. Next, 15 times 0.3844 will have 5.766. Next, 9 times 19.1844 will have 172.6596. Next, 5 times 87.9844 will have 439.922. So, ayan. Nakuha na natin yung product ng frequency tsaka yung square deviations. So, next step natin, i-add lang po natin yan para makuha natin yung summation. So, 338.3532 plus 252.6752 plus 5.766 plus 172.6596 and then plus 439.922. So, yung sum natin dito is 1,209.376. Okay. So, ayan, meron na tayong summation na nakuha. So, for step 9, calculate the variance. Using the formula, yan. So, yung summation of the product of the frequency and the square deviation all over n minus 1. So, yung nakuha nating summation is 1,209.376. Okay. Next, divide natin sa 40 minus 1. So, divide natin yan sa 39. So, 40 minus 1 is 39. So, yung makukuha nating quotient is 31.01. Okay. Approximately equal to 31.01. Next, extract the square root of the variance to determine the standard deviation. So, yung nakuha nating value, square root natin, 31.01. So, square root of 31.01 will have approximately equal to 5.57. Okay, so yan yung standard deviation kung gaano kalalayo yung mga grades ng mga students. Sulat natin dito, S is equal to 5.57. So for our next video lesson, we will now be discussing on how to use appropriate statistical measures in analyzing and interpreting statistical data. So, dyan magagamit na natin yung measures of central tendency and variability. So, ay mga situations akong i-discuss dyan, ipe-present, and then, titignan natin kung ano yung akmang statistical measures na dapat gamitin. Tandaan, hindi lahat ng gusto nating measures pwede dun sa problem. Siyempre, it depends upon the given problem. So, hindi naman lahat pwedeng gamitan natin ng mean, ng variance, ng standard deviation, ng mode. Depende po siyempre dun sa given problem. So, yun lang. Maraming salamat.